When life looks okay but feels off, this is where we talk about it all. Hi, friends, and welcome to This Shit Can't Be It, where we have real conversations, unfiltered, where we rise through all the hard things, or I should say, go through all the hard things, rise above it all, reclaim our personal power. So, whether you're here to be seen, to be heard, get inspired, or even find tools for your own healing, growth, and evolution, you're in the right place. Hi, I'm Anne, your host, and today we're diving into from feeling unwanted to unstoppable, the healing childhood trauma and rising into purpose. Today's guest is Jamie, and from an early age, Jamie carried this painful belief of being unwanted and unworthy. And that belief fueled his childhood trauma, abuse, depression, which led to a suicide attempt at 18. But Jamie's story didn't end. He rose through it all with resilience in healing. He transformed his life from pain into one of power and purpose and became a social psychologist, author, trauma recovery coach. And today we're going to talk about it all. Hi, Jamie. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. I can't wait for this conversation.
Hi, yes, it should be a lively one. Thank you for having me.
So let's just, I love to dive right in. Explain to us what life was like before you came to this realization that you had to do the personal work in order to shift and change everything that happened in your past.
Mine started very early in childhood. My parents were divorced when I was probably a year old, somewhere around there. And it was a nasty divorce, as a lot are. And so, as a infant toddler in that age range, I never even saw a picture of my dad, never heard a name. I didn't even know I had a father. And so there was nothing to base any kind of relationship on. Uh, he never visited. There was no calls, nothing. And so at a young age, I grew up, it was just me and my mom. So she was a single mom. And we, um, we moved around a couple of times, mostly stayed close to my grandparents, her parents, and which was a great relationship. And then when I was 8 years old, she had begun getting sick and getting some treatments and ended up going into the hospital for what was supposed to be about a week's worth of treatments. And my grandmother came and stayed to take care of me while she was in the hospital. And one Saturday morning, I'm sitting on the edge of my bed watching cartoons as I did every week. And my grandmother came in and sat down beside me and said, "She's not coming back."
Oh my God.
So she
And
passed
how old were
away.
you again?
I was 8.
8. Wow.
So this was, I think it was about a month, maybe 2 months before my ninth birthday. So she
Wow.
passed away. My grandparents petitioned the family court to get custody of me. So I stayed with them immediately after. And a wise old family court judge decided that if the boy's father is still alive, he would be better suited to live with him. And so he sent me to live with my father, whom I'd never seen, never met, and who didn't want me.
Mm,
He, I think, probably because of the generation, because of the culture, you know, took it on as a more of a responsibility than
yeah.
anything else. But he made it very clear very early on that I was not wanted, that I was an intrusion. He had already remarried, had another child, lived in a different town. So I was thrust into a new family, a new home, a new location, a new school, and never, never really got the chance to grieve my mother's
Mm,
death. I remember even that morning when my grandmother told me the news, it was like going into shock. I didn't feel anything like sadness in that moment. I just kind of kept watching TV, kept watching the cartoons. And
Yeah.
it's like I froze and the world kept spinning around me.
Yeah.
Um, Even several months passed. I remember one evening specifically where I did start to miss my mom, and the all the new changes started hitting home, and I began to cry. And I was 9 by this time. And I remember my stepmother at that point wanting to give me a hug and comfort me, and my dad chastising her, saying, "No, don't you do that.
Oh, wow.
He can't be a baby forever. He's got to grow up and not cry over every little thing." And this was,
Yeah.
a 9-year-old that just lost his mother
And I
and
think
his
kids grieve
home.
differently than adults as well, because I lost two brothers when I was younger. They were
Mhm,
ill. I was 5 and 9 when they passed away.
mhm,
But kids, I think, grieve differently, and we take on belief systems that are not verbalized to us based
mhm.
on actions that are happening around us. We really take on belief systems, or at least I did anyway. And it certainly sounds like you were thrusted into a situation where that could have possibly happened to you as well, just in from behaviors, not just the words, but
Mhm.
behaviors as well. So, yeah. So, what happened after that? You realized you're not allowed to grieve at this point.
Exactly. And so even even what by this even from the sense of the trauma itself being there, being within, then it was all of a sudden I I had to shut it down. I wasn't allowed to express it. So I never got the chance to grieve properly. Excuse me. And I started I started developing the symptoms of depression from there on in terms
Wow.
of long periods of sadness and melancholy, and going in and out of periods of enjoying activities just like a normal kid, to having fun doing things, to going through sometimes months of not enjoying anything, and started developing very deep thoughts and feelings of being unwanted, unloved, unworthy. Even like in school, I was a very good student, fairly intelligent, did well in school. And so when I would have an achievement in school and come home and try to talk about that, it would get shut down.
Oh,
Like
wow.
almost like, "Oh, I don't believe you," or "It doesn't matter." And, I've learned a lot growing up and looking back, and it's it's a shame, and it's hard for people to go through things in their family and in their culture and in the time frame that we live through. We're all just trying to process what's going on around us, and we're all trying to live and adapt to the world that we live in, that we're handed sometimes.
Yeah.
And I look back, and my dad, he was treated the same way when he
Mhm.
was growing up. He was in an era where education was not important. The only value you had as a person at all was work. He had to drop out of school in the ninth grade to go work in a factory.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that I couldn't even fathom.
Yeah.
Was
Both
you
my
had to quit
parents, same
school in
thing.
the ninth
Yeah.
grade and then go work in a factory?
Yeah.
What? I got my first job, I started when I was like 15, and it was like a little part-time job, and, and I still can't imagine. So,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm not excusing the psychological and the emotional abuse that was real, but the perspective was that to to be valuable is only what you can do, what you can
Yeah.
provide, what you can give. And so here I was, this unwanted intrusion into this new family, and there wasn't anything that I could provide. And that's what started to stick with me. And as I
Mhm.
got older, even on into adulthood, in which we can kind of get to later, it stuck for many, many, many years, was the only value I had to someone in a family, in a romantic relationship, sometimes even in friendships, was what was I doing? What could I do for them? And there's a lot of cases of people that get stuck with that thought process, get stuck with those
100%.
feelings.
So when you got blended into this newfound family, you say they had kids together as well?
Yeah, they had a son, so I have a half brother that's younger.
Yeah, and did you notice or did you feel that you were treated differently
Oh,
from him?
absolutely, absolutely, all
Yeah.
the time, all the time. He was, you know, treated what I would consider normal and lovingly. Um, yeah, there was many, there was many, and siblings have fights and disagreements anyways. That's just part of what comes with it. And there's some of that that's normal behavior, Some that's not, but some of it is. But like for instance, one time I was sitting on the front porch of our home eating an ice cream. And my brother comes out of the house and he's like, "Oh, can I have some of that?" And I'm like, "No, go get your own." He gets up and goes back in the house. Okay. I'm still sitting there eating my ice cream. About 10 seconds later, my dad comes storming out the door, grabs me by the arm, pulls me up, and starts hitting me. "How dare you take that from your brother?" And blah, 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 and blah. So, because I didn't, give him what he wanted, he went back and told, "Oh, he took my ice cream." And so instead of there being some kind of discussion about this, or, "Hey, what happened? Did you take his?" There wasn't even a question. It was just automatic jerking me up, and
Yeah.
start hitting. And
Yeah.
that was kind of the way it was. I was always labeled as attention seeking, the black sheep of the family, that lazy, um, all these things that on a child that was still going through trauma and dealing with depression and with no real help in any of
No.
those areas.
No. No. So fast forward to 18, because let's face it, teenage years are not easy for most people on a good day, let alone
No,
someone that's
no, they're
already
not.
dealing with a ton of trauma on
Yeah,
top of it and not
yeah.
having, like you say, a loving family around you. Like,
Hmm. Yeah.
walk us through that.
Teenage years are not fun a lot of the times. You're dealing with internal hormones, you're dealing with cognitive development, you're dealing with external social development, peer pressure. All of those things are just normal part of the process for being a teenager. But when you are in a situation that is complex trauma, and this
Yeah.
is where kind of looking at some of the psychological labels, you have PTSD, which is the exposure to one severe traumatic event. And then you have CPTSD, which is complex post traumatic stress disorder, which means you're exposed to the same type of event time and time and time again, sometimes for
Oh, okay.
years. We see this with sexual assault survivors that, as children, went through that multiple, multiple, multiple times. We see this with child abuse victims where it wasn't just one case, it was just on and on and on, and the same thing. So all of those things going on, and part of the symptomology of that being that you just kind of develop this hopelessness, this view of life that things will never get better. And the depression does that too. So when you have multiple things telling you internally, your subconscious is telling you that all you can see is the doom and gloom. It's very difficult, even when there are good things. It's not that you don't see and experience some good things, but it's almost like the the enjoyment from them is so brief that it's not enough to hang on to. And you just constantly feel and see the hurt and the pain. And the
Yeah.
pain is so heavy for someone going through something like that. It's so heavy. And you get so tired. You get so tired to where you can just reach this point of just, I can't do this anymore. And
Mhm.
that's how I got there. Right before I graduated high school. So my high school graduation was almost a month before my 18th birthday. And the week preceding the graduation, my dad said, "You're about to turn 18, so that means you got to get out." And not in the sense of, "Hey, I want to help you find your own apartment. I want to help you become independent, maybe go to college, maybe get a better job." It was, "You're about to
You're
turn
done.
18. You're going to get out." So here I am thinking, well, I don't even have a place to live. I I wasn't registered for college. I didn't have any help to do that. And even the opportunities that I did have through the school, I just didn't have the emotional energy to pursue it because I just didn't see a future at all.
Yeah.
Everything. So right right about a week before my 18th birthday, I was working at a convenience store, third shift, and it was a little bitty town. You know, people would come through usually until about 10, 11 o'clock, maybe at night. And after that, we might have one or two people on a weeknight, and then that was about it. It was pretty dull, pretty boring
Quite.
the rest of the evening. So after 11 o'clock, um, I went over to the shelf in the store where I was working and picked up 3 boxes of sleeping pills and just downed them. I took 36 pills and then just kind of sat back and waited and waited and waited. And it was after, I do remember it was after 12 o'clock. So it had been a good hour. And I kind of was looking at the clock going like, okay, how long is this supposed to take? I just want to go to sleep. I just I just want to go to sleep and it all be over. Not to be any more pain, not to be any
Mhm.
more struggles. And I didn't go to sleep. And sometime between 12:30 and 1 a.m., a local officer came in to get his coffee or soda or whatever and noticed, something in my face, in my eyes. He was like, "You okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." He said, "You don't look okay." I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." He's like, "Yeah, I don't think so. You don't look okay." So he called the EMS and the ambulance came. And when they came, of course, I told them what I had done. And it was, I say funny, it's not funny, haha funny, but interesting. Like on the way to the hospital, they kept questioning me. They was like, "We found the 3 empty boxes from the pills, but what did you do with them?" I said, "I took them." They said, "There's no way you took 36 pills and that had to have been like 2 hours ago. You would at least, you would have been out by now and possibly dead." And I was like, "No, I took them."
So they had no
That,
impact on you?
other than just making me like space out. Um,
Wow.
I didn't go to sleep. No. Um, so went to the hospital, went through that procedure, ended up in a mental health facility for a month. And that was the very first time that I had any exposure to mental health care. That was the first time in 9 years that I had ever talked to a therapist or a psychologist, psychiatrist, anything about the trauma, about the abuse, about the depression. Um, so at least in that moment, I kind of got some validation from that, that, okay, this isn't just you. You're not just a bad
No.
kid. There's more to this.
Wow. So after that, how did things start to transition where you realized that you had to do some of your own personal growth, the development?
Yeah. Even in that moment, like when I came back after that, I just wasn't emotionally ready. I
No.
mean, here I was 18. I still definitely wasn't mature. Um, I wasn't ready to do anything at that point. So it still took several years of just kind of struggling with the depression, you know, dove into drinking almost every day just to try to be numb.
Mm,
Um, and then when I was about 21, I ended up facing a situation where I was going to be homeless again. And I reached out to my grandparents, my mother's parents,
mm,
and said, "Hey, here's a situation. You know, could you help me out for a little while?" And they invited me to move in with them, which that was the turning point because moving in with them, uh, I, one, just started eating normally. So my grandma would cook. So of course I'm going to eat. That was the first time in probably 3 years that I had eaten 3 meals every day. I
wow.
didn't even know what to do with that, you know. Um, and they'd be like good home cooked meals, you know, not something out of a box.
Yeah.
So I started putting on weight. I started growing. Um, I got a job there close to them. So I started working regularly. In other words, the my life sort of normalized
Yeah.
to a
You're getting the
point.
support you needed.
Yes. And that's when I kind of got to a point where I felt like, okay, now let's tackle this issue. Now I started
Mm,
going to therapy and it took, you know, still took several years worth of therapy, getting on medication for the depression before it kind of started balancing out, I'll say.
yeah.
And during that time, I started going to college. I wanted to take psychology. I wanted to learn about what I was going
Yes.
through.
Yeah.
And my one of my professors very early on said, told the class that it, a funny thing about psychology is most people that go into it do so to try to figure themselves out. And that was very true in my case. And but the more I learned, the more I was just like, wow, this is great. I love this. This is fascinating. Um, I didn't know what I wanted to do with it yet because I didn't go into it really to go into the field, you know,
Yeah.
for a career. I did it for myself and for interest. And then I started thinking, I was like, well, you know, I I want to help people. I want to work with teenage boys that are in the system, you know, that maybe their parents are in prison, maybe they've been to jail, you know, maybe they're in the foster care system. Kids that have been through some things that I've been through because
Yeah.
I can relate, so I can help
Mm,
them. Uh-huh, sure. In my senior year in my bachelor's program, I got an internship with a boys' home, and within my 3 months internship, I was done. I said, nope, I,
Wow.
not doing this. I I would come home and cry after being there. It was,
It's taxing. Yeah. It's
yeah,
taxing.
I was very empathetic anyways. So I just absorb other
Mm.
people's emotions. So to sit there, even in an internship for like 3 or 4 hours, to sit there straight and just listen to problem after problem after problem and problems that I couldn't do anything about. I think that's one of the things that bothered me the most.
So
A
in your
12,
psychology training, they never taught you to protect your own energy and your own.
not at that stage.
No.
Not in the bachelor's program, they didn't. Um,
Wow.
there was some mention of it, it was probably in a class, but that was something I hadn't learned yet. And and honestly, looking back, it wouldn't have mattered a whole lot anyways, because I myself had not healed enough to be in
Right.
that role, which is
Yeah.
a good which is a good lesson. All right, kids, gather round. This is a good lesson. Even if you're very passionate, even if you're very empathetic and caring and you want to help people, there's not just one role. There's hundreds. So just because if you can't be a quote therapist, that doesn't mean that you can't be effective and you can't make a big difference in people's lives and your community and the world around us. You might be an accountant that can work for a nonprofit. You might be, you know, whatever. There's hundreds of different jobs that you can still make a difference and be effective. And that was what I learned, you know, kind of the hard way, but at the
Yeah.
same time, it turned out to be a blessing.
Hmm.
I ended up deciding then, no, I'm not going to be a therapist that in this role, but I want to help. So I got a job with my first nonprofit in program development and management. And that was amazing because that I could do, I could still care, but do something else that made a difference.
Nice. Yeah, that's powerful. So, yeah, like there's so many listeners out there that are going to have their own journey of childhood trauma, so to speak.
Hmm.
For me, it was just having death early on in the family with, two sick brothers. My mom went through a lot of trauma as a child. Again, similar to you, but a little bit different. She
Hmm.
was an unwanted child as well, but her whole family kept her history a secret because, like you say, that generation secrets got buried. If you weren't doing the churchly or godly thing and it got buried. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what happened with my mom. Like she was raised to believe that who was her sister was actually her biological mother because her mother was sent away to have her because she got pregnant out of wedlock. So she got sent away
Uh,
to have the baby. The premise was to give the baby up, but when grandma or mom went to go get the daughter after the pregnancy, grandma came home with the baby adopted.
oh,
So, yeah, so my grandmother adopted her grandchild as her daughter. So my mom was
okay.
raised believing that Nanny and Grampy were mom and dad, and her actual biological mother, she thought she was her sister. She
Okay.
didn't find out until later in life that
Wow.
that was her mother and these people were her grandparents. And it's a big
Mm,
family, dramatic. My brother has done a lot of research trying to figure out because my mom never knew who her dad was. So my
uh,
brother's done a lot of research trying to figure out who her father was based on the genetic deficiency of my brothers because they had a rare genetic hereditary disease,
uh,
and they were only the fourth and fifth or the fifth and sixth case ever noted in the world.
wow.
So again, it was probably prevalent, but because of the lack of technology to identify it,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
they were early on. So anyway, fast forward, she was similar to you. She was in this family dynamic and couldn't understand why she was always treated differently.
Uh-huh.
You knew why you were treated differently. She didn't even know. So she married fast to get out of the house fast, and she ended
Uh,
up marrying an abuser.
Mm,
and had 3 kids by him, that 2 of them were the sick boys. She finally got away from him through other not healthy relationships, eventually found my dad
uh-huh.
and had another boy and then me. So I'm the last of 5 kids.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I'm the baby, the only girl. So, but for her, like it was trauma after trauma. It was the childhood and then the marriage
Uh-huh.
and, and even navigating, even once she found my father, because she had kids with her abuser, her first husband, he was never out of the picture until the
Hmm.
boys passed away. Because my older brother has never wanted anything to do with him because he was a witness to the abuse early on, and he never wanted anything to do with him. So after my last brother passed, he was out of the picture. But up until then, he was still mind, I'm going to be blunt with it. He was mind fucking her as much as he could
Hmm.
because he could.
Hmm.
And nobody could stop it because you can't control other people. You can only
Yeah.
control how you perceive and all that other stuff. So it's interesting because she and my dad tried to protect us from as much trauma as possible. But it's going to come. You have a path.
Yeah.
We're here in life. We have a journey. We don't always understand why, especially when you're young and in it. You never at that age ask, why is this happening to me?
Right.
You don't ever see it as this is going to be part of my future journey. And, this is going to be my path to be able to come into a career. Like it's not looked at it that way as kids.
Oh, yeah.
It's
No.
not.
No.
So
No,
so
definitely
it's
not.
it's no, we don't have that brain capacity at that age.
Mm.
So now that you're an adult, things are starting to unravel. Fast forward now to how did you start to get to the point of using the psychology and becoming a coach at this point?
Um, the coaching didn't actually start until many years later when I was working for a domestic violence and sexual assault agency. And the same thing, I was in program development and management. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Man, that's still like the best job I've ever had working there because I got to use all of my skills and gifts and passions. And it was just, I just enjoyed it. Enjoyed the people I worked with, enjoyed what we were doing to help people. And as I worked with people, so I had my bachelor's in psychology, and I'd always had I won't say always, but I started developing this goal of one day going back and getting my master's. And I started noticing in when I was working at the agency that there were things we were using that were old.
Mm,
And by that I mean, so we would get educational materials, for example, from the state and the federal level on domestic violence. And I knew I was looking at this stuff. I was reading this stuff and thinking, wait a minute, this was written 20 years ago. We know a lot more about this now, this issue.
yeah,
Um, and like for instance, one of the roles I ended up, I don't know if I don't think I adopted it, but I guess it was, kind of assigned to me. I was the only guy working there, and which is very common in that field because most victims are female. And
right.
I mean, that's just historical. That's just the way
Hmm.
it has been and still is. However, as years go by, as studies grow, as more people speak out, it became more apparent that there were men that also suffered domestic violence. Well,
Absolutely.
the materials we were getting from, like I said, from the federal level were still 20 years old. So there was no mention, no discussion about male victims and survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. So
Mhm.
basically, if we used those materials and we went out to the public, let's say I went to a local college to speak about these issues and try to help college kids have a better understanding about things, I would be dismissing half the crowd right off the bat. They would be left
Yeah.
out in the cold because there was nothing for the the men. And so I'm like, this can't be right. Why are we still doing this? This can't be right. That we have a lot more information now. So I started to kind of get this idea like, okay, I would like to at some point go back, get my master's degree, and learn what's current in
Mm,
some of these issues, especially trauma, and find ways to get that out, get that information out to the public, to professionals, you name it. Well, as I started, so I started taking uh, just single classes and courses, not really in as part of a degree program, but just going here or going online and taking these courses. And as I did that, I started running into people through my work that they needed something more. They needed something more practical because I was always very practical in my approaches, which came from my own growth and healing. Like I picked up journaling as part of my healing. Um, I learned a lot about diet and exercise. What now's the buzzword is somatic. And this is, again, this is stuff that's been known since like 1973, but hasn't been put into practice a lot when people go for mental health counseling or therapy. We're still kind of stuck sometimes on just talk therapy, and just talk
yeah.
therapy is great, but it's not the end all and be all of healing.
No.
Trauma is in your body, in your nervous system, physically. So anyways, the more I kind of started learning and getting some clout, the more I started talking about these practical issues. And so people would come to me, well, yeah, I've been through this as a child, or I went through this, and I'm kind of stuck. I already know what I've been through. This isn't a brand new issue for me.
No.
I'm kind of stuck. So I started helping people. Okay, what are you stuck on? What habits are you recognizing? What triggers are you recognizing? How's your diet? How's your exercise? How's your self-talk? How, so then I was like, okay, well, why don't I just start doing this? And I went and took some courses on coaching, got certified in a few different specialties, and that's how I got into the coaching itself. And that was really kind of what led into me having the opportunity to finally go back and get my master's degree and do some specialized work on trauma.
Nice. That's awesome. Yes, because there's so many different fields and avenues and rabbit holes that you can go down in that one field alone. Like it's crazy.
Hmm.
And here in Canada and North America as a whole, coaches are everywhere. You don't have to be certified and you can still have good impact, but
Hmm.
there's so much that you can focus on. Like I've talked to people that specialize in, divorce and like you say, domestic violence and coming out of that rabbit hole. There's coaches that are just generalized life coaches that try to hit all different areas of your life. You
Hmm.
know, I'm a coach and I focus on the behaviors and the belief systems and how to shift and navigate. So there's so many little things that you can get into when it comes into this coaching field
Yeah.
and have good impact. But at the same time, it's like, holy moly, like there's so much that you can do. And, I don't want to bash the medical system, but I find they're there for set reason and to deal with people that are really, really, truly stuck in trauma in ways that most coaches are not equipped to navigate. I know even for me, that's not my specialty, and nor do I want to tackle that. You've got the psychology degree, you're more equipped for that than I wouldn't even take on somebody like that. So, you
Yeah.
know, that's the difference between just coaching in general, but then having the psychology degree backing it up, you're bringing a new flavor to the whole word therapy because our traditional medical therapy is very boxed with limited
Mm-hmm.
education, but they're also limited to a specific field of expertise,
Mm-hmm.
where coaching just takes things to a whole different level. So if you've got that background and you're in coaching, in my opinion, you're that much more powerful because you're more well-rounded with that background of understanding of how the mind, body, brain works together.
Yep.
And it's key. And I find, and I'm sure it's the same in the States, but I find our medical industry as a whole is very boxed into what they learn in their specialty, and they
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily go outside of that box
Yep.
when it comes to treatment. And like you say, it's old school ways of teaching, and they're still teaching it today, even with all the technology.
Yep.
I often talk about Dr. Joe Dispenza. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not, but
Uh-huh.
he takes the science of the mind to a whole new level because he maps everything. He
Mm-hmm.
wants the scientific proof, so it's not just woo woo chat,
Yep.
woo woo chatter. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually backed by scientific proof. And that's where I find the big gap. It's like universities are still teaching the way they taught many, many years ago. There might be a little bit of newer information in there, but they're still teaching that same old, like you say, talk method.
Yep.
And like I've gone to therapists and I've gotten frustrated because it's like I could spend years and thousands of dollars that the medical industry recognizes and will give you compensation for to go to these people. So
Mm-hmm.
if somebody's $200 an hour, medical will kick in and pay for maybe 150 of it or whatever your medical plan is, but they don't recognize the hypnotherapist. They don't recognize
Right.
coaching in any way. They don't recognize, so many other modalities that are just as impactful, if not some of them are even more impactful. I've had
Yep.
more impact from coaches that are not psychology certified than I have from the medical field of psychology.
Yep.
And like I say,
And
I'm not bashing the medical field because they have their purpose. But for
uh,
me as an individual, just navigating life and wanting to understand and have strategic skills and abilities and the ability to move forward is key. Like even my daughter was diagnosed at the age of 13, 14 with ADD, high social anxiety, select mutism. We went to therapy. The therapist helped us out more helping us understand her than they helped her. And it's like she wouldn't put her hand up to go to the bathroom. And, just simple little things that required normal social interaction, she couldn't do it because she had select mutism and was unable to speak. Like
mm,
the stress of putting your hand up and being noticed in a classroom was
oh
so
yeah.
stressful for her that it was not something she could do, period.
Yeah.
And their solution is here's a rub rock. And I'm like,
Wow. Thanks.
what the fuck? I'm
Gee,
like, what
thanks.
the fuck?
We
Yeah.
appreciate all your support with the
Yeah,
rock.
and it was
Yeah.
and I mean they had some small tips of, work with the schools and the teachers that if she has to go to the bathroom, she doesn't ask, she just puts, the rock or a colored eraser or something on the desk so they know that what she's doing and she
Mm-hmm.
just walks out. But even that for her to get up and walk out, all of a sudden attention, she's moving, so attention's on her. She
All
didn't
right.
even want to do that. So it's like, okay, you're not helping her at all.
Right.
Like it was like she doesn't want attention drawn to her. So what are we going to do? I had more help with the school system by making sure her desk was placed by the door so that if she
Yeah.
had to go do
There you
that,
go.
there was less attention on
Right.
her.
That's the first thing I thought of when you said that. I was like,
Yeah,
put her seat her
put her
next
by
to
the
the
door.
door.
Yeah, no
But
help.
yeah, I'll bash the medical industry. I don't mind.
Well,
We
you've been
we
in
still
it
operate
differently.
under a system
Yes, I
that
agree.
was created for profit. When you create a helping field for profit, I'm not just saying for a a person that works to get paid. That's not what I'm talking about. You do a job, you deserve to get paid for it. That's part of life. We're all in the same boat on that. Doesn't
Right.
matter if you're a mechanic or a doctor.
100%.
But for a system of helping, to be for profit, there are certain things that's going to come with that. When you run a business and you're trying to make more money, more profit, you do things by cutting costs, by having limitations on spending, by
Yeah.
increasing how much you charge for a product. You know, when Legos first came out, they were probably like, 25 cents for a box of Legos. Now you can go into the store, uh, Walmart, Target, whatever, and buy a Lego set for $200.
Yep.
They got to make a profit. They've increased costs, blah, blah, blah. This is the same formula we're using for medicine. This is the
Mm.
same formula we're using to train doctors. So
Yep.
you have medical schools. I don't know about Canada. I haven't researched it, but I can tell you
Not much
100%
different.
in the US that 3/4 of the leading medical schools are owned by the pharmaceutical companies.
Yep.
Does that sound like a conflict of interest? It does to me. A
Yep.
company that's making billions of dollars is also providing the education. And guess what education they're providing? Oh, here's these new drugs that cover up these symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
There, it has long and
Yeah.
correctly been said, there is no money in health. There's only
No.
money in sickness.
Right.
And that is part of the problem that we as
Yeah.
individuals facing these issues like depression, anxiety, PTSD, bipolar, ADHD, all these things that we're dealing with as individuals and as families and as society, here's part of the problem. We've
Yeah.
been fed a belief system that the only way and the correct way is taking a pill,
Right.
and which is not true by
No.
any
And it's
means.
still pushed today. Like even here
Yes.
in Canada, it's still pushed today. So
Yep.
as you're talking, I'm like biting my tongue because my mom, again, we'll go back to my mom. She died
Uh-huh.
at the age of 57. I was
Okay.
23. And
Mm.
she had a ton of health issues. And
Yeah.
she was on over back then, this is like in the 90s, over $500 a month worth of drugs. That's like
Good
equivalent to
gosh.
1,500 to 2,000 nowadays.
Yeah.
But like all for me to rhyme off, I don't know everything she had, but she was on fluid retention pills, antidepressants, blood pressure pills, diabetic pills, like heart and lung, like she had nitrous for her heart, and she was being tested by a lung specialist and a heart specialist, and all these drugs were counteracting each other. And between the GP, the lung specialist, the heart specialist, and all these different doctors she was going to, nobody looked at her drug intake to see what was counteracting each other, what the side effects were, and how it was impacting her body. I believe the drugs actually killed her. Can't
I'm
prove it.
sure.
They can't prove it because her entire system was so internally fucked up
Yeah.
that
No wonder.
they could not determine cause of death. So on her death certificate, cause of death was unknown. But ultimately what happened to her, she ended up drowning in her own fluids.
Yeah.
But before this happened, we were asking, well, why is her lungs filling up with fluid? Well, her heart's not strong enough. You go to the heart specialist. Well, the lung specialist saying her heart's not strong enough, and they're like saying, no, we tested her heart. Yeah, she's overweight. She's got some clogged arteries, but all her main arteries are open. She doesn't even need a balloon, and her heart's good and strong. And like everybody's counteracting everybody, and then boom, she's gone. Well, when we had an autopsy done, oh my God, the woman had cancer. They never ever found it. Her diabetes, she shouldn't have been on pills. She should have been on insulin because her kidneys were shot. Like it was insane the things that got revealed inside of her autopsy report. And that was back then. Fast forward to just in this past year,
Mm-hmm.
I take my daughter to the doctor because with ADD and autism, because she got diagnosed with autism last year, as on top of everything else, it's not
Mm-hmm.
uncommon for their heart to pound into their chest because they're
Yeah.
under a tremendous amount of stress and anxiety
Right.
that average people cannot relate to.
Right.
And so it's common to have strong heart beats
Mm-hmm.
and or racing hearts. So it
Mm-hmm.
was a concern. So I took her to the doctor so we could take her to a heart specialist, have everything checked out, make sure there's nothing wrong
Mm-hmm.
because it was concerning her. And while we're in the doctor's office talking about her heart, she brings up her anxiety. And I'm like, yeah, there's anxiety. And she starts talking about her anxiety. Next thing I know, she's wanting to put her on antidepressants. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, we're here for her heart. You haven't even diagnosed her with clinical depression.
Yeah.
She has anxiety, she has situational depression.
Uh-huh.
I'm no doctor, but I don't see any clinical depression. And you want
Uh-huh.
to put her on antidepressants and she's 18 years old? I'm like, not a fucking chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's so many people that allow the medications to get pushed before even
Yeah,
questioning.
right. And that's like I said, it's because we are ingrained now with that belief system. And not just us, but the doctors. And the doctors, and I am not bashing all
No,
doctors and
no,
every
absolutely not.
aspect of the medical. I'm
No.
saying the system as a whole has long lost its path
Hmm.
of healing. And so there's no stop and consideration of, okay, what's the actual cause and what what is going to be long-term health, not
Right.
just here, take this pill, you're going to be on this pill the rest of your life.
And the
That's
cause is never looked at.
that's a crime to me.
Yes.
That's a
Yes.
crime. Um, and I've done trainings on this one issue, and I've had medical doctors come to me and say, I've never heard of this before. And it's the ACE study that was done in the 1990s in California, where they made a direct link between childhood trauma and adult disease.
Yeah.
There's a score of 1 to 10, 0 to 10, and by the time you get to 4 on this scale, so 0 to 10, if you reach 4, your likelihood of chronic disease as an adult is 4 times greater than the national average. And there are
Right.
doctors,
And the
medical doctors
studies.
that don't know this. They're like, "What?"
Society should know about this.
Yeah. They're
Yeah.
like, "Are you serious? What? I've never heard of this study before." I'm like,
Yep.
how did y'all go through medical school?" Where they're like, "Well, that's because I'm not in psychiatry." I'm like, "You don't have to be in psychiatry. This is a cause and effect. We're talking about."
Mhm.
And by the time you get even higher on the scale, like I think it's either number 6 or 7. I want to say it's 6. If you get to a 6 on the scale, you have a 20-year lower life expectancy. This is not like
And if you know that, imagine
mental
how impact.
gymnastics.
No. And
Right,
if you know that, the impact to be able to change that
right,
earlier on
exactly,
is massive. And
exactly.
that's what Dr. Joe talks about. Like, he was my contributing factor of shifting and changing my entire life and lifestyle to
Mhm,
where I am today, because he had the scientific proof. And even though I didn't understand all his terminology, I was able to connect the dots and what he was saying. And he was saying that if you're constantly living in stress and that fight, flight, or freeze, your body's chemically producing. And like, this is something I
yep,
can understand. It's producing a ton of chemical changes, not to mention, the cortisol, the endorphins,
cortisol,
like
yeah,
all of it is constantly higher. And I'm like, I'm living in stress. I thrive on stress. This
yeah,
is not okay. And I'm like,
yeah.
how? And I even said to myself, I was like, how is it I'm not chronically ill yet? And I was like, wait a minute, don't fucking go there. Because as you say it, you can bring it to fruition. So I was like,
Yep,
hold the phone. Don't want it. Let's not go there. But my body was starting to show signs of what I would call aging and acceptable breakdown from,
mhm,
being young, physically fit, pushing your body to endless limits because you think you're invincible. Those past injuries started to show and rear its ugly head and started to have aches and pains and all
mhm,
the things of breaking down. And when I became an adult, when my mom passed away, I started to ignore my physical body. So the weight come on. So I did a ton of damage over my adulthood, not even having a clue or awareness of what I was doing to this vessel. But then realizing it in the mental mind, it was like, holy shit, like I'm in pretty damn good shape considering what he's saying. I'm like, how's that even possible?
Yeah.
But and honestly, like when I look back at my own life and lifestyle, I think the only reason I was able to stay that healthy is because at night I shut it all down and my body got rested. Like I sleep well, always did. And I think that I didn't stay stressed overnight. The stress didn't consume my rest period. And I
Mm.
think that's the only thing that kept my body in the shape that it was in because the way he was talking, I'm like it explains why people our age that is in that, high 40s, early 50s, like some of the people we've gone to school are already gone.
Yeah.
Like they're gone from cancer and different types of illnesses and disease. And it's
Mhm.
like, holy shit. So even at this age, it's like you're starting to see people that you grew up with, leaving this earth because of
Mhm.
sickness and illness that could it have been curbed? If you listen to people like Dr. Joe, it could have if we had have had the information and the knowledge at an earlier age.
Yeah. And if you automatically know as a physician, as a therapist, whatever, if you automatically know that 3/4 of the disease in adulthood could possibly be tied directly to childhood trauma, then you know, okay, let's let's treat where you're at today, but
Yeah.
let's start figuring out, is there something else that could be treated that will make a difference long term? And
Yeah.
that's when you start digging in and saying, okay, all of this stuff could go right back to nervous system deregulation and gastrointestinal, cardiac dysfunction from mental illness, from trauma, from all this stuff. So let's start working on those pieces. The medicine is absolutely important and vital. The talk therapy is absolutely important and vital, but they are just pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
They're not
And
the
there's
rest
times
of the puzzle.
right. And there are times medication is required. Like
Yeah,
I'm not,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
you know,
Same here. And that's why I say it's, especially if you're like in the beginning of your
mm,
healing phase, if you're in the middle of dealing with a mental illness and the symptoms, yeah, 9 times out of 10, you're going to need to get on medication. It will help stabilize you, but that's not the end of it. That's not the stopping point.
no.
Once you get to that point is when that's when you kind of get the mental energy, that fatigue hopefully will go down enough for you to put some energy and some thought and emotion into the other things that are going to heal you long term. That's why,
Mm,
like in my case, when I started getting into journaling, I was like, oh, wow, this is great. And I started noticing the difference in it.
yeah.
When I got into even just walking on my lunch break at work, I started noticing, oh, wow, I'm not fatigued as
Hmm.
much in the afternoon after eating. I can think clearer.
Yes.
My mood is better. You
Yeah.
know, when I cut back on drinking, I used to be addicted to Mountain Dew. I would drink Mountain Dew all day, every day.
Sugar. Yeah.
And when I cut that out, I can remember like a year later, after getting off of Mountain Dew, thinking, wow, you know what? I actually feel better. I don't feel like I need that anymore just to keep going. So
Right.
there's all these little things, all these other important parts of life,
Yes.
that should be focused on for long-term growth and health. And the more you grow, unless you're dealing with a severe mental illness, I mean severe,
Mm,
you probably won't need the same medical care year after year after year.
right.
It's very possible to decrease that. Some people have totally gotten off of certain medications and
Hmm.
treatments. Some
They
people
gotta
just
want
need
to.
less,
Yep.
and that's fine too.
Yeah.
But those are, like I said, those are just pieces of the puzzle, and we
Right.
need to do better about, okay, now that we've got those in place, now let's move on and teach people how to
Mm,
actually build resilience and self-care, and so
right.
that they can have real healing and growth and not
Yeah.
just, quote, less symptoms.
Yeah. So because you've got the medical background in the psychology piece as well, why do you think that, or what's your opinion on why that industry doesn't take their clientele to a place of root cause? Like I'm not about rehashing the past, but when that shit happens, we adapt belief systems and they don't work on that. They don't take you back to when you adopted this belief system.
Mm,
What is the belief system? Is it really still working for you now, and how can we shift it? Like, to me, that's when I go to a therapist, that should be the number one platform of dealing with people to help figure out how to help navigate them out of why they're showing up on your door anyway.
yeah.
And I don't see any of that happening. I even asked the therapist when we were in with her, like, how about we go back to the root cause? And I was ignored, like I was brushed under the rug.
Wow, that's surprising.
And
I
I
mean,
was like, what the fuck?
yeah. So talk therapy has, it's come a long way. I I think we sort of reached a point that in the education of talk therapy that we sort of plateaued
Mm,
in that, there were so many brilliant observations and discoveries over the past 150 years, in terms of suppressed memories and how things in your subconscious affect your behavior. Then people were like, oh, started connecting the dots of, oh, wow, that's amazing that, I didn't even, that's amazing that something that you don't even realize is causing damage or to
yeah,
yourself and to your relationships. Uh,
absolutely.
and so we gained um, a lot of benefits from those studies. But I think I think it kind of plateaued at a point to where it's like, okay, we've reached this pinnacle in terms of understanding talk therapy and how it relates to specific conditions, and it sort of just stopped. And a lot of the other things that are actually beneficial kind of got the same label as in psychiatry as they did in the other medical field. I'll say psychology. Psychiatry
Mhm.
is medical,
Yeah.
but the same label started being used in psychology as was the medical field, and that is alternative. So, in
Mm,
other words, we progressed to this point of medicine first, medicine, that being God, and everything else was, nah, that's just old, old wives' tales. That's just, oh yeah, you shouldn't drink, take a herb out of the backyard and make a tea out of it and drink it. That's just nonsense. That's old wives' tales. And that's what people did way back in the day before we had medicine that was scientific. And so now science is God. And now we're kind of coming back full circle to where people are starting to realize, oh, wait a minute,
yeah.
that stuff actually worked.
Right.
And we can do that. And it actually works now. Um,
Yeah.
and the same being with therapy that and listen, I'm telling you, I worked with so many therapists, and these are people that care,
They
they
do.
want to help people, and they're doing what they can. One, they're overloaded.
Hmm.
Mental health care is through
The
the roof.
medical industry is not
It's
healthy.
right.
Their
Our
their workers are taxed.
right. It's through the roof here. So they can't do everything, and they're not supposed to. Again, this kind of goes back to what I was saying in terms of just being a piece of the puzzle. We
Mm,
have to learn, we have to understand in mental health care and physical health care, which they are the same, they work together, they're not separate. But in healthcare, we got to take some more self responsibility and understand that this is a person I talked to for an hour. That's all they know is what I can tell them in an hour.
right.
They're not with me 24/7 for the past 20 years.
And that's
They
not
only know
enough.
a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think in talk therapy, we got to start hitting it home better that when that person comes in the door as a therapist, they should be saying, when you walk in the door, we're going to start, day one working on the plan to get you out. Now, those first few sessions are going to be discovery. They
Yeah,
don't, all they
foundational.
know, they got to try to figure out what's going on. Why
Yeah,
is this happening?
foundational.
What are you going through and why? And which should be, what's the root cause of this? That when you said that kind of surprised me. That should be like the foundation. That is the foundation of psychotherapy is the root cause. So a therapist should be what's happening now, what are you experiencing and why? Let's get to the why. Once we kind of get there, then it should be more of instead of just talking about that uh,
Yeah,
in infinity,
yeah,
it should be okay, what can we do to fix that?
right.
And which involves physical health, you know, mental health, emotional relationships, all there's
All
so
of it.
many pieces
Right.
and it takes time to navigate these things. It takes
Hmm.
time. I could give you a laundry list of things to work on. You can't do all of them at once. And that's one of the good things, you talked about earlier in terms of coaching, coaching versus therapy. One of the good differences is that therapy should be that past. Let's dig into the past. Let's figure out why you're here today and figure
Hmm.
out what's happened and how we can deal with that. Whereas
Yeah,
coaching is more where you're at today and move forward,
right.
more practical stuff.
Yeah.
Not so much of let's just talk about the past, where that's different.
Hmm.
So there are different strengths in that, and that I
Right.
think people, unless you've been through it, you don't know that. Um, but yeah, we've got to just keep digging in and keep working on holistic efforts
Mm,
until that is common, until that is the
yeah.
first answer that you get when you go to the heart specialist. Okay, let's look at this holistically. When you go to
Yeah.
the therapist, okay, let's look at this holistically. When you are having problems with weight and you're obese and you're going to your doctor saying, I need help, okay, let's look at this holistically,
Right.
not
And I've been
just,
forced to look at holistic. I
yep,
believe this thing right here is the most powerful thing on the universe, period,
yep,
is is this brain. And I believe because of what my mother went through and what I experienced with my mother and the belief system I created around the medical industry, which is not all bad, but I'm very guarded when I enter the medical system, knowing they're pushing drugs first before they even
hmm,
have a ton of information. So
yep,
I'm very guarded on that. And I believe my brain, my body has created resistance to the drugs without even having the drugs. Because
mm,
as a child, if I got sick and I needed, like mom and dad didn't rush us to the doctor every time we had a cough. We
right,
dealt with it at home unless we had temperatures that were too high or it wasn't going away. Then we
hmm,
go to the doctor for antibiotics and penicillin.
yeah,
To this, I was fine as a child. This day right here, right now, I can't take any of it.
hmm,
You give me any form of antibiotic, penicillin, even prescription pain meds, can't take them. Cannot take them. My body rejects it. And you cannot tell me that it didn't happen in here because I was
yeah,
fine as
yeah,
a kid. It
yeah,
was after my mom passed away this started to develop. And
hmm,
I remember I had a dog bite, self-inflicted, my own doing, but it started to spider. And one of the
that,
guys are at work,
that
they're
sounds
like,
like an
and
interesting story, but go
it
ahead.
does. We won't go there. It was a dumbass move on my part.
Uh-huh.
Getting in between two dogs play fighting and not sticking my hands where they need to be.
Yeah,
So
yeah, bad
anyway,
idea.
I got bitten and
Hmm,
the blood vessels started to spider. And there was a
yeah,
guy at work. He's like, "And you got to go to the doctor." I said, "I'm not going to the doctor. They're going to give me shit I can't take." He's
yeah,
like, "You have to go to the doctor." So I went to the doctor and she literally She was a newer doctor to me because my previous doctor had left the province, which was happening a lot. And anyway, she went through her book and she went through my history because half these drugs I can't pronounce. So she went through what I was diagnosed or what I was prescribed in the past to make sure she didn't give me the same thing. And she's literally going through this book trying to find another antibiotic or a penicillin to kill the infection. So she gave me these medications and she's like, any sign of a rash, anything, you call me, you stop taking them and you call me and you get in here. So I took one pill that, so I get the prescription filled. I took one pill in the morning. I was at work and I'm sitting there and I start scratching my stomach and I was like, wait a minute. And
Uh,
I pulled my shirt up and I had a rash starting already. So I was like, I called the doctor. She's like, get in here. I'll cancel an appointment. Get in here. So I went in and she gave me a different prescription. She's like, try these, throw those ones out, try these. So I went back home. I looked at my husband. I threw the pills that I had down the toilet, wasn't taking them. And I didn't even fill the second prescription. That one pill, that one
mm,
antibiotic, even though my body started to react instantly, was enough to take that away.
oh,
I never took another pill after that. And they gave me enough to last for 2 weeks.
yeah,
And I'm like, WTF? Like, why are they giving me so much medication when
right,
one pill did it? I mean, my body started to break out and started to rash. Like,
right.
I mean, and I'm like, our bodies get people that run to the doctor all the time that are constantly getting antibiotics and penicillins. I believe, and I'm no medical professional, but I believe our body builds a resistance to it.
Oh,
So,
yeah, they definitely studies have shown that
yeah,
right now,
there you
actually,
go. Yeah.
I read a study just a couple of weeks ago where I forget if it was in Japan or Australia, but I think it was Japan where they were studying a new form of antibiotic that because your body builds resistance to those, and we've kind of run the gambit on the ones that we know, and so
Yep.
they're having to come up with a new one.
And
And now
that's what a
this
friend
one,
of mine said. She said
yep,
they're probably making them stronger than they did back in the day, first
hmm,
of all, because so many people are resistant to it that there's a new standard of dose, so to
yep,
speak.
yep,
And my body can't handle it because I don't feel it
yep.
at all. Yeah.
Yes, there's so much that to study and to learn.
Yeah.
My my advice for people dealing with mental health issues and trauma recovery is become a student of yourself.
Mm,
In other words, take the time to start observing, start writing down, start taking notes, start asking the questions of yourself. What am I experiencing?
I love
What do I
that.
want to work on? What works for me? What's an area that what's one area that I can grow in that's going to help this issue, you know, and just start working on it. You become a student of yourself. You'll learn within a few years, probably less, things that are actually beneficial to you and that you enjoy. That you enjoy. Now I can't if I go a week, if I go one whole week without going for a nice long walk outside or a run, I'm like what was something what's wrong? Something's wrong, something's missing. And I'm like, yeah, you've been busy for like the past 4 or 5 days
Yep.
and you haven't gone on a nature walk or
Yep.
just a walk outside in the sunshine and fresh air
Yep.
because I've gotten so used to it because that's a
I
happy
love that.
place for me,
Yes,
you
I
know?
love that. I was just going to ask you, do you have any strategies or tips? And you just dove right into it. So,
Yeah, yeah. That's
and
one.
that's awesome. Yeah.
That's the easiest. And we could chase this rabbit for day. This is just walking. Just walking. Studies show that people that walk for 20 minutes at least 3 times a week have a higher life expectancy. And they're not measuring anything else, just
No,
regular walking.
walking.
Oh my gosh. But for
Yep.
me, so journaling became one of the one of the, I guess, just foundational parts of my healing and growth
Mm,
is something I dove into and enjoyed it so much and saw immediate benefits.
yeah.
And then from long term, just kept it up. And it's something I still do to this day. And um, making some diet changes. I'm not hardcore about it. I need to do better. I still try to do better sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, but even just a few changes made a difference. Cutting
Yes.
almost totally eliminating sodas. Every once in a while, I may have one, but it's
Yep.
not something I do on a daily basis. Eating yogurt and drinking kefir and eating um, sauerkraut, you know, things like that on a regular basis. So not every single meal. I don't get up for breakfast and eat
Eat
sauerkraut. It's
sauerkraut.
nasty. Sorry, sorry, my German friends. That's nasty.
Put it in your
But
eggs.
oh no, no.
No, I know.
But
I don't even like sauerkraut.
the point being that one of the things I learned was that it is very common for people with mental health issues to also have um, micro your gut biome, to
Yeah.
have digestive problems, whether it be IBS, whether it be uh,
Yeah.
acid reflux, things like that. Well, I learned that your gut
They go hand in hand.
microbiome
Really?
sends dopamine to your brain. Guess
Yeah.
what's lacking in mental health conditions? Dopamine regulation. So your gut health is extremely important. It is probably the number two important thing when you're talking about mental health. I
Wow.
mean, so things you can do to heal your gut, like eating foods that are pro and prebiotic. That is, I mean, that's like the number one thing in dietary
Cardinal.
concern to start with.
Yeah.
If you want to pick one thing to start with, make it that. So those are things I learned that I started incorporating in my life that have made a long-term difference. So that
Yeah.
even when I experience some depression, it's very far between. So instead of having a problem every month or every 2 or 3 months or 2 or 3 weeks or whatever, it might be once every 6 months or maybe once every three
Yeah.
months. I don't know. And even when I do, it's probably only going to last a half a day. I can
Yeah.
almost I can almost put it on the clock now. When I start feeling that that little sense of depression, I can almost tell you within 4 hours it's going to go away
Wow.
because I've
That's
learned
awesome.
my body so well
Yes.
that I can sense it and I know
You
how
know
long
it.
it's going to last and I know things to do to bring my nervous system into regulation.
Yeah.
And that all comes from putting these things into practice and just keep doing them, keep doing them, keep doing
Yes.
them,
Habits.
and make it a part of your lifestyle. And
Yeah.
again, that includes everything. That includes learning the self-talk, learning
Absolutely.
to recognize that, which you can get
Yeah.
from there. If you're going to therapy, go in your therapist's office next time and say, "Hey, look, I know, let's work on self-talk here because I experience rumination. I experience this where these thoughts just keep going and going and going, and I'm having problems with it. Let's work on that. You
Yeah.
know, become a student of yourself so that you do your own homework. You know what you need to work on, and then do it. And yes, that includes getting help. So I'm by no means saying, okay, you're just on your own and absolutely, I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for people that helped me, you know?
Mhm.
That's part of life. That's what life should be.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I get emotional because,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
I have friends and family. I have therapists I've worked with in the past. I have teachers that have made a huge difference in my life.
Yeah.
That's what we need. we need to support each other and encourage each other. And so you're people that are going through this stuff, you're not alone. You're not the only
Mm,
one to go through this.
oh,
And if you're listening, watching, whatever, guess what? You've already made it past. You've already overcome 100% of the things that
mm,
have come against you.
yeah,
If not, you wouldn't be here listening. So you
yeah,
can do it. Just just start learning yourself and picking out the pieces that you need to work on and
yeah.
just do it.
And people that have been through it, surround yourself with people that are where you want to go.
Yes.
Find those mentors, those guides, those whatever you want to call it for you, like figure that out, but don't keep yourself in the people that want to keep you stuck and or
Hmm.
feed on giving you information to keep you stuck because they're stuck too.
Yep.
They don't know
Absolutely.
how to help you because they can't.
Yeah.
So just we've gone over, which I'm fine with, but let's just touch base. Who is your ideal client? And I'm going to have all your contact information below this video so everybody can contact you, but who do you really focus on working with when it comes to your business?
As a trauma recovery coach, I specialize in helping people that already know how their past trauma has affected their life in a negative way, but just are either tired of living that way and ready to move forward, or maybe feel stuck. Like, you know, they've gotten on medication, they've been to therapy, so they've done the right things, but there are certain aspects of their life that they they can't move forward in. They've kind of hit speed bumps and can't get past them. And so I really help them in taking an honest look at what they're dealing with and how they need to move forward, making an action plan, a real plan to do those things, and then supporting them as they put those pieces into place and starting today and long term going forward, healing and growth to get out of that trauma. Just so instead of just surviving, let's move on to I hate that term of thriving, but it is.
Yeah.
You've just been surviving, but you actually want to enjoy life and you actually
Mm.
want to experience the good parts of all aspects of life: mental health, physical health, relationships, career, all those things.
Love that. Love that. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Like I say, anybody wants to contact Jamie, his information is going to be below in the description. So make sure you jump in there, click on his links, get connected. And like I say, thank you so much, my friend. I was so looking forward to this conversation today. And I so appreciate you for coming on and being just open and candid.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Excellent. Thank you so much, my dear. Take care, everybody. Remember to breathe deep, and we'll be in touch soon.